Have you ever gone to an interview for a job? You go to an interview for a job and they tell you they're going to get back in touch in a couple of days. For example, you go for an interview on a Tuesday, they tell you they're going to get back to you on a Friday with an answer if you got the job or not. Friday comes along and the clock is ticking, you're watching the time, it's midday, you're thinking, well, they might get in touch in the afternoon. Then the afternoon goes by, it gets to about 5 o'clock and you really want this job and you're thinking, I really want the job, and then it becomes after hours and you start thinking, why have they not got in touch? They said they're going to be on touch Friday. The weekend, obviously not going to get in touch at the weekend, and then you've got to wait till Monday and you think, shall I wait till Monday to give them a call? Shall I call them now? Will there be anyone in? And then you think, well, maybe they're working after hours on a Friday, they might get in touch. Nobody calls. And you go into the weekend thinking and stewing over the fact that these people haven't got in touch for this job interview, and you're wondering, will I get this job, will I not? And literally your weekend, you feel stressed, you feel down, you're almost wishing it away, and come Monday, the first thing you do is pick up the phone, and you think, I'm going to give them a call, or should I not call? Alternatively, you've gone out, for example, you've gone out on a date, someone you like, you've gone out on a date, you really like this person, and you go out, and you have a few drinks, you have a meal, and then you go home, and you think they might text you to see if you've arrived home safely, text doesn't come through, the following day arrives, morning, still no text, 2 days have gone by, still no text, and you're stewing over it, you're wondering what's going on, you talk to your friends, you tell your friends, this always happens to you, or you're wondering what's happened, why haven't they got in touch, and you're just thinking of all these various permutations as to why not get in touch. Alternatively, maybe you've gone and done a presentation for work, and the feedback is pretty good, all in all, but there's a little bit of feedback that you're not too happy with, and you stew over it, for example. You stew over it, you think, how could they say that? How could that person say that about me? Or you send an email or a text to somebody for work, and they don't get back straight away, and they normally get back straight away, and you're sort of wondering all these different permutations. What could it be? Why have they not got in touch? What's happened? What's gone on? And you wonder, and you stew over it, and you think, what could it be? Why have they not got in touch? I'm sure we've all been in a situation where some of the things I talked about have happened, maybe all, if not one, but we all go through situations in life where our mind hypothesizes over all sorts of permutations. Now, tonight we're going to talk about cognitive distortions. I'm going to go into cognitive distortions in a bit more detail shortly. Yet before I begin and go through and help you, if you haven't come across this before, develop an understanding of cognitive distortions, if you understand, you're a therapist or you're a coach, and you're aware of the distortions as reinforced learning or different perspective, let me share a story before we begin and move forward to show the impact that this can have in people. Now, I was doing some consultancy work at a company a few years ago. I was doing some business coaching, and the director of the company said, Jim, there's a woman who could do with you talking to her. And I said, okay, I'm happy to talk to her. What's it about? And I thought it was going to be more business related, because I was assigned to do some business consultancy work. And when I spoke to the woman, she would have been about, say, mid-20s at the time. And as it happened, she said she had depression. Because of my therapist background, although I didn't sign up to do that work, that organisation, I felt, well, I'll at least hear her out and decide what to do going forward. We'll see what happens. If I think it's appropriate and applicable, then I may take the patient on. If otherwise, I may refer. It all depends on case formulation and obviously the remit I have with the organisation. Now, this woman says to me that she has depression. Okay. So we got into a dialogue, and I want to explore a little bit more. So I understand you want to talk to me. I said to her, how can I be of help to you? What can I do? She said, well, I understand you have a therapeutic background, and I just want to have a chat and just see how things go from there. So I explained the process and procedures to her. And to cut a long story short, we talked in detail, and she told me about her depression. And I just want to see how functional she was, because my understanding was she just got promoted at work. She had a promotion, she'd been working away at the company, doing pretty well. Bright girl, bright woman I should say, seemed to be relatively motivated. So I'm really intrigued as to what exactly was going on in her mind. And I spoke to a young woman and said, tell me about your life. Tell me a bit about what you do. And you've got this promotion. Enlighten me. Tell me what you do. Tell me what makes you tick, what motivates you. She told me about her life. She goes, I'm really pleased to have got this promotion at my age. I worked really hard to get it. I studied really hard. I've got there. On top of that, I like going to the gym. I go on the weekends. I go for meals. I socialise. I go away pretty much every month abroad to a different city to enjoy myself. And she told me about her life. And I'm thinking at that point there, I'll swap my life for yours for a month, as you do. Yeah, that's another story for another day. But that was going through my mind. I'm wondering, well, she claims to have this depression. I said, well, have you got an official diagnosis? And from what I understand at the time, she'd gone in to see a GP, allegedly, and he prescribed, or she prescribed her with some medication. But to cut a long story short anyway, she told me she'd increased the medication and things didn't really seem to be working. So I said, enlighten me. When do you feel depressed? Because you're quite functional. Were you functional before the medication? She says, yeah, pretty much. I wasn't doing anything different before the medication. Jim, you don't understand. I feel good most of the time. That's a positive thing. That's a good thing, isn't it? And sometimes people need to be aware that night is day, day is night, sadness, happiness, and the balancing act, as we say. And she said, when I log on Facebook, Jim, everyone seems to be so happy. All my friends seem to be really happy all the time. I said, really? Yeah, she said, well, they're all happy and they all have what I'd like to have. And I said, what would you like to have? And she told me what her life, her ideal life would be. It was quite interesting, really intriguing, because obviously anything like Facebook or any sort of social media, I guess it's there to make your life easier to a degree, keep in touch with family, friends, and it's good from a business point of view to let people know what you're doing. But as human beings, sometimes we've got a tendency to compare our life to somebody else, and that's what she was doing. Now, the danger with comparing your life to anybody else, particularly on social media, you only see a snippet. You only see a snippet of what they want you to see. So ultimately, she's not seeing, and I told you, not seeing, people aren't putting pictures of when they stub their toe, or they're in the toilet, or they're doing all sorts of different things, or they're having a row, and these are things that are common amongst people. These are things, you know, we as human beings, we go for ups and downs. You don't need me to tell you that. But in the end, she's sort of comparing, and that's what we tend to do as human beings. We compare, which is okay to a certain point, because comparing ourselves to somebody else is okay, because we can sort of benchmark and we improve and we go forward. But the danger is when you start comparing yourself to somebody else and you feel inadequate. Because the danger is when you're doing that, it's never enough, really. And also when you compare yourself to somebody else and you get a snippet of that. So we talked about it, and eventually, through working myself, a few sessions later, she gave me a call and says, Jim, I've decided to come off medication. Not that I advised her to do so, I'm not a medic. I didn't say she should or she shouldn't. It was her call in the end. I said, you do what's right for you. Yeah, in the end, I'm not advising you to do either or. She said, you don't understand, I feel great now. I feel good. And to cut a long story short, I put this to you. Was it Facebook that caused the issues in those situations? Or was it her interpretation, her thoughts around logging in and seeing? Well, you could say the latter. You could say if Facebook didn't exist, she might not have those thoughts. In saying that, I'm sure she'd find a different way, like she used to do in the past. Maybe look up and down the street or when they meet their friends. But I suppose with social media, it's always in your face, really. But to cut a long story short, we have an event, we have a situation, and our situation stimulates our thoughts, and our thoughts sort of run wild, don't they? And we have all sorts of thoughts, and those thoughts are linked to our emotion, and then our behaviour, and physically, and they all go hand in hand. Now, you could say that her thoughts, and when we did do work, and what I did do with her, the first thing I looked at is the trigger, which seemed to have been her comparing her life to other people in certain situations, and her thoughts around that situation. Now, the key was to identify a number of cognitive distortions, and record them and rationalize them and start to replace them and start to cognitively restructure the mind. Neuroplasticity, the brain can rewire itself, which I won't get into detail this evening. I've had seminars on that. It's another seminar another day. But ultimately, in the end, it proves that the only thing that we can control, I guess, to a degree, is our thoughts. Yet we need to be aware of our thoughts. And these tend to happen automatically or unconsciously, if we want to use that word. It's entirely up to you. Before we begin and move forward, I have an exercise for you to do. I'm going to blow the whistle every 30 seconds. And what I'd like you to do, every time I blow the whistle, write the first thought that comes into your mind. If you may, please. If you haven't got pen and paper, please grab one. We're going to keep it really interactive this evening. It's going to be a really good seminar. You're going to really enjoy it. Grab a pen and paper. I'm going to blow the whistle every 30 seconds. I want to write the first thought that comes into your mind. Are you ready? Write the first thought that comes into your mind. We'll wait 30 seconds. And write the next thought that comes into your mind. Right, the next thought comes into your mind. Okay, so hold that thought. On average, they say that we have 60,000 thoughts per day. So they say. It's an assumption. I haven't counted myself. No one's examined anyone's brain to see one way or the other. Yet, in saying that, give or take, we do have a lot of thoughts every day, and for the most part, you could argue that they're harmless to a certain degree. Yet in saying that, in certain situations, some of these thoughts can lead to us feeling emotionally unbalanced, us feeling irrational, us feeling anxious, us feeling negative. These thoughts and some of these thoughts can stir up all sorts of emotions in us in certain situations. Now, just like I mentioned the girl who logged into Facebook, as a general rule, she was okay, to revert back to that story. She'd work, she'd go about her business, yet when she logged on and she started comparing herself to certain people, her thought process would then start to become, you could argue, irrational to the extent that she was perceiving her life comparatively to somebody else's life where she felt she should, and I say the word should be, at that age in these situations. And I said to her, there's a very good chance someone's looking at your life and thinking, I should be there, or I'd like to be there, or focusing on that aspect of it. Yet in saying that, unless we bring it to the awareness consciously, we sort of drift along. We drift along. It's almost like life. We drift along this treadmill of life and we don't stop to evaluate our life. The life evaluates it. Now, of those 60,000 thoughts a day, the ones you had yesterday are very likely going to have the same ones tomorrow. And today. And the day after tomorrow. So, unless you examine your thought process, and you evaluate your thoughts, and you consciously become aware of your thoughts, it's likely you're going to repeat the same cycle. Yet, in saying that, if we evaluate our thoughts, we can start to change our thoughts. Change our thoughts, we can change our feelings can change. Our behaviours can change, we can feel physically different, and we can work on variable areas in certain situations. Yet in saying that, we don't evaluate our thoughts, it's very likely. And the irony is, the way we perceive certain events is based on beliefs we've had many, many years ago. Even as far back as 3 or 4 years of age, which we'll go into in more detail very briefly as this seminar goes on, but we'll have other videos on beliefs and schemas. Yet in saying that, for this evening, let's just focus on cognitive distortions and the impact that they can have. So let me give you a scenario going forward. Let me give you a scenario, give you an idea. Let's say, for example, you go into work tomorrow and you hear on the grapevine, very loosely, that they're making redundancies. Now, you don't really have any substantial evidence for that, only other than you've heard very loosely that they're making redundancies. And you go into work, you get up in the morning, and you go about your business, and the person who told you is a colleague at work, and they've just made the assumption for one reason or the other. And then you're at the photocopy machine, and the boss doesn't acknowledge you. And you start to wonder then, why has the boss not acknowledged me? Normally the boss acknowledges me, say hello, how are you? And might be inquisitive and ask how you're doing and how's things and all the like. On this occasion, the boss says nothing. Now ultimately, that situation, that event, obviously depending on how much you want your job and how important the job is to you, ultimately can lead you to start thinking and stewing, like we mentioned earlier. You don't get a text back, or you don't hear from that person for the job interview, or someone makes a comment about a presentation you did. And ultimately in the end, you start stewing over it, and you start thinking, oh no, does that mean I'm going to lose my job? How will I pay my bills? How will I send my kids to school? How will I pay for this? How will I pay for the other? What if I end up living on the street? So all these variable permutations, you start feeling nervous, anxious, and you start behaving erratically. You go back in the office after lunchtime and you start becoming erratically until you just email the boss a scathing email. And I'm sure that you've done that before, maybe not the boss a scathing email, but you've had someone an email or a text that if you could take back you would. We've all done it. All done it. Now ultimately in the end, you can see how if we don't evaluate something, it can blow out of proportion. And I'm sure we've all been in that situation. Example, you might be driving in a road rage. You don't think possibly the person who cut into your lane could be rushing their wife to hospital because they're going to labour. So we don't really think that. We kind of automatically work ourselves up in certain situations. Now, let's say you decide at lunchtime to alter the course of events and you talk to your resident therapist. So you give me a call. Hi, Jim. This is a situation. I've heard that the boss is going to have to make redundancies, and we sort of question the validity of those thoughts and the situation. Now, it could be that they are making redundancies. We don't know that. Yet in saying that, if they do, I'm sure you can bounce back. Yeah, let's examine the evidence first of all, and then we sort of rationalise. And the more rational we can be, the better place we are in life, the healthier we are emotionally, the better quality of life that we have, in the sense that we have in the Western world variable coping mechanisms for our emotion. So in the end, really, you reevaluate and think, well, actually, it could be the boss had an argument with his wife or her husband the night before, or maybe they are preoccupied with something else, maybe they didn't see you. All these permutations are possible. So let's not jump to conclusions. And then you go back and you decide, you know what, I'll ask somebody else who's in the know, and they say to you, well, I'm not sure if they are making redundancies. And then you decide to knock on the boss's door and say, I've heard they're making redundancies, and the boss sits down, you ever talk about that, and you find that that's not the case. Ultimately, you do find that's the case, and the boss didn't ignore you, they were just really preoccupied. And you can see how our thoughts in certain situations, you can see how these cognitive distortions can creep into our mind and affect us emotionally and behaviourally, and they can affect us in many ways. Now, ultimately in the end, the more rational mind, the clearer we are, the more clarity we got in our thinking, the better place we are in the world. The better we'll cope from that point of view. So the same could be true. You might be walking down the high street and you see an old friend of yours or someone that you know really well, and they walk straight past you, and ultimately in the end, you stew over it and think, how could they walk straight past me and get angry, and they ignore me blatantly, and and then you send them a scathing text saying, why did you walk past me? And then you start talking about them behind their back and all the like, and then all you need to do really is send them a text, say, I noticed you in the high street today. Oh, I didn't see you, they might say. And that changes your whole perception of the event. Change your perception, you change your world. Okay? And we'll talk about that as we go along throughout this evening. So these cognitive distortions, they're a part of CBT, Cognitive-Behavioural Therapy. They were first developed by the psychiatrist Aaron Beck, one of the pioneers of cognitive therapy, behavioural therapy, and they were further developed by Dr. David Burns, who was one of Beck's students, and he was responsible for popularising them. He gave them labels, examples, and if you haven't read it already, a good book to read is the Feeling Good Handbook. The Feeling Good Handbook, don't quote me on it, it's more than them lines. David D. Burns, Dr. David D. Burns, quite a useful book, quite a useful read anyway. I'm not advising you to go and buy it or anything, but it's quite a useful read, which sort of explains this in more detail. Now, awareness is key. We talked about that before, because ultimately, if you think about it, we're kind of on autopilot, aren't we? We kind of live our life in a sense of autopilot. We just drift through life, we talked about earlier. So we can change our thinking. It is possible to change our thinking, yet in saying that, to change our thinking, we need to be aware of the situation. So we've got to take a step back and almost like see the situation from the outside looking in. Almost like you're advising someone else who you're not emotionally connected to. Because you get wrapped up in the emotion of it all, you get fired up in your thoughts, and they spiral like a snowball, and they spiral, and they spiral, and they spiral. Just imagine a spiral, and spiral, and spiral. And these distortions, they tend to have similarities, and one has a knock-on effect like dominoes, and boom. And you could argue that the difference between mental illness and wellness, or degrees of functionality, are the frequency, the magnitude and duration of these cognitive distortions. That's something for you to think about. Functionality. Mental illness, mental wellness. There's a fine line. Now I say to you, if someone has a broken leg, broke their leg, is it acceptable for them to go to see the infirmary or go see a doctor, whatever? Of course it is, you're saying. Of course it is, Jim. Or if someone has a condition like diabetes, is it acceptable for them to seek treatment? Of course it is. So the same applies for our mental health. The same applies for mental health. Now tonight's seminar is purely educational. So whether you're an existing therapist, a student, or you want to learn for yourself, you're a teacher, you're a parent, you just want to be more aware, you want better relationships, you want to improve the quality of your life. It's entirely up to you, it's purely educational, not intended to treat anybody. All treatment is based on individual case formulation. Yeah, I'm going to go into some detail, and I'm sure you'll take a lot away from the seminar. But really our emotional well-being and our well-being and our quality of life comes down to our thought process, the way we perceive certain events. And who is the most important person you communicate to? Who is the most important person you communicate to? Yes, yourself. Very much so. And the reason being is that, let me give you an example. Let's say you did lose your job. So you lost your job, for example. You lose your job and you're made redundant, and then your thoughts are, oh no, how am I going to pay bills? You get anxious, you get down, you start feeling depressed. It has a big impact on you emotionally, you become withdrawn, you don't socialise no more. Big impact on you in more ways than one. Behaviour, become withdrawn, become lethargic, you walk around, you start feeling like really slumped and down like this. Another big impact on you going forward. It's like a spiral, isn't it? Yet ultimately in the end, the situation or the event, you become redundant. And I'm not saying you're going to go out there and jump for glee depending on job. Yet in saying that, I'm sure there's been times in your life in the past where you may have been made redundant or may have lost a job you overcome certain challenges, and you think a bit more neutral, a bit more clearer, a bit more rational, a bit more focused, and you carry on living your life to the best of your ability, because these things can impact our life in more ways than one. Our relationships with our friends, with our family, in many different ways, and even our judgment to move forward. So the most important person you'll communicate to is self. So you might have a breakup, for example. So for example, you might have a relationship breakup. Let's say you break up in a relationship, you have a breakup, and you start thinking, I'll never meet anyone again, I can't believe they did this to me, why me, what has happened to me, and you feel negative, despondent, you become withdrawn, you don't go out no more, and in the end that person's off and they do whatever they do, they're the one that's going to suffer as a result of that situation. Now, obviously it depends how happy you were in the relationship or perceivably happy in the relationship. It might be that the same event happens, you decide, oh, I wish I'd have gone earlier. Here you go, good riddance. Maybe that's been a bit more over the top, but ultimately maybe neutral. You might think, well, actually, the person doesn't want to be me. Ultimately, the end's probably for the better. And you pick up yourself, and you move forward, and you do things at the time you didn't have before, and you build your life back up again, and you run your own race. You stay focused on where you are, where you want to go, and you stay functional, you stay balanced, you stay well, your quality of life, you move forward. So that's going to give you an insight in the world of cognitive distortion. So really, the cognitive distortion is an irrational thought, a biased way of thinking. Okay, you perceive something in a certain way. Some of these cognitive distortions are going to come this evening. They've got what we call similarities. They're very, very similar in some ways, some of them, and they work in a knock-on effect. Now, when you think about it, it's getting an awareness. As a therapist, you want to bring an awareness to your clients, to your patients, self-awareness, even for yourself as an individual. You become aware of other people's distortions, then you might react differently to them. Because you understand that they perceive the world in their own way. You don't take things as personal as you might have once did or do within situations. So these irrational thoughts, you could argue the irrational thoughts, they lead to problematic emotional states and behaviours, and they tend to have a knock-on effect like anxiety, relationship conflicts, as you can imagine. So personally, professionally, run into challenges. We can become withdrawn. They can really impact us, like I said earlier, in that story of that girl who was starting to become withdrawn, and eventually might have, who knows, in her words, felt that she was going to have to start taking time off work, and all these situations can happen. So really, once we can become aware, we can start to challenge it. We can start to identify and start moving forward. I mentioned earlier, you change your perspective, you will change your world. And that's the key. Now, going forward, okay, we all have cognitive distortions. We all have our own way of thinking. We all have our own reality. We all have our own biased way of thinking. You have what's right for you, or think is right for you. I think what's right for me. Distortion centers around the way we focus on ourselves, the way we focus on the world around us. So it's a biased way of thinking about ourselves and others, the world around us. We all have our own unique reality. We all see things our own way. We all wear rose-tinted glasses to a certain degree. Some of us have stronger tinted glasses than others, yet ultimately we all have that. And that's okay. There are specific ways that we all think. The key is, and when this becomes a problem, is when it starts affecting us emotionally and we become unfunctional, become anxious, become depressed. We experience all these negative emotions, we have conflicts as well, and life becomes difficult. In life, we need to all live with one another. In life, we all, ideally, all get on and are happy and do the best we can. Yet in saying that, in the world we live in, whether it's right or wrong, it's not always easy as that, is it? because we've all work, we all have challenges, everyone's got problems, we all have things that we've got to deal with. So life isn't always easy. And there are times our mind is going to play tricks on us. And there are going to be times in life where we do go through challenges. So give me the strength to control what I can. And sometimes let go of what I can't. One thing I want to get clear, by the way, is that emotions are a guidance system. Emotions are there. They're letting you know something is wrong. So experiencing emotions is good. And I'd like to teach every school, or get people to teach students in every school, emotional intelligence or awareness, become more rational, more logical, teach them empathy, these values that seem to be lost along the way, especially with technology. And I think that if you could do that, it would make a big impact. It would really help people who have these coping strategies, whatever these coping strategies are. In the Western world, we tend to sort of suppress emotions in our own way. We look for distractions to suppress our emotions. So we might watch excessive TV, I'm not against TV, watching films and sport and the like, but we tend to sometimes, focus. And these days, we tend to have a box when we get up in the morning, and a box when we go downstairs, we get in a box, we go to work in a box, and we come home in a box. We tend to have this distraction to distract our mind, and we look for the answers outside us. And people have these coping strategies to cope with these negative emotional states, and it's like a bottle of fizzy pop. All big is in fizzy pop, it's coconut water, I don't have any fizzy pop around. If you keep shaking it, eventually if you open it, it's going to explode. And not everyone's going to explode, but obviously it's going to have an impact on us eventually. So really, talking about emotions, how we feel, and talking about events and our thoughts and our feelings would go a long way to helping people, not just young people, anyone of any age, but ultimately in the end, if you can start young, then it's key. Because in life in the Western world, we've got sometimes bad coping strategy, excessive alcohol, people sometimes rely on medication. I'm saying good or a bad thing, I'm sure some people might need it, but ultimately in the end, medication is really a stopgap, you could argue, because in the end, really, we've got to find other ways to move forward as well as, and I'm not one of those sort of people who's dismissing it, I'm not a medic, it's not my area, I'm not qualified to talk about that, but what I would say ultimately in the end, do we really want to suppress emotions? We're meant to feel, they're our guidance system. Now, in the Western world, and I suppose in any world, we tend to have an illusion. We have the illusion that someday I am. And I'm a big believer that life is about the now. Why is life going to be better in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? You've got that someday I will. Someday I will be happy. The illusion, one day when I drive that car, when I buy that new house, when I start that job, when I get married, and there's kids. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with materialism or anything in life for that matter. We create the meaning. We create the meaning, don't we, in life? Really, if we're going to be very esoteric, what means anything anyway? When the meaning creates it. So what I'm saying is that if you can't be happy now, the likelihood is that whatever you get in your life, materialistically, like when you buy a new car, it's great for the first week. Yeah, I got a new car, I'm driving around and swanning around in town. Woo, look at me, a new car. Then it wears off. Or you find a new relationship. Or all these things generally will wear off at some point. Or you look forward to the wedding and the planning and the big day, and you're out there and all the like. And I'm not saying anything wrong with that. I'm just saying that people they have these focal points. And then what happens 2 weeks after being married on a honeymoon, they realise that they're both human and live together and start bickering. I'm not saying everyone does that, obviously, and some people, for the most part, people have long positive relationships. But ultimately what I'm saying in the end is that we need to be happy now, and you need to be happy with self. No one is going to make you any happier than what you are. If someone's going to make you happy, obviously they can make you sad as well. So there is no salvation in the sense that it's inner salvation. People got these motivational seminars, and there's some value in them. There's some value in them. They're fine, and they read these books. But ultimately, the reason why we have so many conflicts in the world and mental health is on the rise is people are always looking for the outside. We've got to look within and analyse and assess our own thoughts and think very clearly. Because people tend to chase this illusion. And I think, for the most part, we live in a really noisy world now. The world's become a lot noisier with all the social media, with all stuff going on, and people are working longer hours and more stress. And just stop and look around once in a while, and you'll notice yourself, and you go to a restaurant, and people are on their phones tapping away, and they're not communicating. And mental health, don't just take my word for it, do your own research. It's on the rise, and it's going to carry on rising and have a big impact in the world that we live in if we don't stop and reevaluate what we are and start appreciating living the moment as well as, and I'm a big believer in goals, great, and when I do sessions with people, we set goals, and they're fantastic in goals, but I'm also a big believer in living in the now. If you can't be happy now or be balanced now, and there are certain days where you're not going to be happy, then you're going to get out of bed and you feel frustrated, and sometimes you've got to realise and embrace the emotion just as a guidance signal for change, and you can chase this illusion, and you simply chase the illusion and think, well, one day I'm going to be happy, I'm going to go on holiday in tropical paradise, and they almost like wish their life away, and you see they have this illusion of what's going to be like in tropical paradise, and they even put on social media, can't wait to go away in tropical paradise, and the days go by and by and by in this tropical paradise they're going to go to, and they tell everybody, and then they put it out there, and then they get to tropical paradise and it's really, really hot and humid. They wake up in the morning, all mosquito bites everywhere, and then in the end they think, oh no, the food's no good, the people, they're not very pleasant, I can't wait to go home. They get home, they think we should back. So really, you've got to take control of your mind, I'm saying. You've got to really focus on the things that are important to you. And you've got to sometimes reassess and understand the way we think. Now, moving forward, and back to the program, so the purpose of the identifying these distorted ways of thinking is the model states there are specific ways people distort their thinking, which we're going to go into in some detail throughout the seminar. And the purpose is really by identifying the distortion. We're going to identify distortion, which we're going to cover shortly. Identify them. We can help people. So the goal is not to eradicate the emotion. Emotions are a part of life. Every emotion shall pass, no matter good or bad. So if you ever have a bad day and you feel negative, you can lie in bed, listen to some music, it will pass. We want to weaken the production of the irrational thought. That's what we want to do. Weaken the production of irrational thought. Because the more rational we are, the more rational our perspective, the better we'll do in life. The happier we'll be, the more peace of mind we'll have, and we'll become more functional. We have better well-being. And also what we're going to do is be very clear and be able to be very distinctive into what's irrational, what is a distortion, what are we thinking, be able to be more rationalized so we can identify the distortion. I want to be clear, so identify with a capital I, the distortion. And once we've identified the distortion, we can have a look and see the impact it's having on our life and our well-being and our feelings, rather than suffering in silence and just going through the motions. And as a general rule, the analogy I use, I keep a piece of paper up. You might not notice if I rip one piece, rip two pieces, rip three pieces. So if I keep ripping, you end up with a mess, eventually. So prevention is better than cure. What we want to do is identify, or at least have the capability to identify, to pave the way. So we want to pave the way to a better way of thinking that strengthens our resolve. Rather than look for the easy way, like a lot of people do, they keep looking for the easy way in life. We want to find the strength of character to rise and meet any challenge that comes our way. And as human beings, it's quite ironic that we tend to hypothesize over problems that don't even happen. We're probably one of the only species that, and I bet a lot of your worries, and a lot of anyone's worries, my worries for that matter, haven't materialized anyway. So you think, well, even though I do focus on my worries, I'm not solving them. So really, my philosophy from coaching is focused 10% on the problem and 90% on the solution. Because problems do exist, obviously. There's no point being Pollyanna, yeah, the grass is green, everything's fantastic in the world. It's not, there's challenges. But let's get a sense of perspective and realize that most of our worries will never happen. And the more we worry, the worse quality of life we're going to have. And ultimately, worrying about it is not going to make it any better anyway. So we've got this natural tendency to worry. It's unconscious, almost like when if you've seen a spider in the library, you jump 6 feet down, then you rationalise, think it's not dangerous anyway, or you ever send a text to somebody, and then you rationalise and regret it, or an email, with hindsight. So really, that split reaction, that emotional core of the brain, that fight, flight, freeze response, generally that 0 to second response is an unconscious response. 0 to 6 seconds, we generally have an unconscious response. That fight, flight, freeze, very primal brain. We respond in that way. Now, ultimately, then, what we want to try and do, or the aim is, what we want to do, in effect, is become more rational and push things more to the logical part of the brain. A little bit when I train some people to do at press conferences, what I do to do that, it's another story for another day. What I do is I get the person, before they ask a question, to open up a bottle. And there's no vodka in there, could be water. Have a sip and then answer the question. There's a more clear, logical response. You've got a little bit more time to process it and think about it and go forward. What I say to people, the key is really give me the sort of control I can, let go of what I can't. Life is tangible, it's just the way it is. Life sometimes isn't fair, it's not as easy. In saying that, going forward, all we can do is the best we can. So we're going to do tonight, we're going to cover 10 common cognitive distortions that I come across quite regularly in doing therapy, so you can follow it, you can watch the video again if you want to. The some of these educational purposes are not intended to treat anybody. In saying that, if you're a therapist, a coach, it could be reinforced learning, it's a perspective, or if you're learning new, you're making your way, you can watch this as often as you can. We're going to make it available to watch all the time. We're obviously live, and I thank you for watching and everybody who's turned up today. But ultimately, in the end, the more you rerun it and learn, and you go forward. So we're going to cover 10 key distortions, and then we'll surmise. And what I can do in a future situation is talk about ways to identify distortions clear and then start a restructuring process mentally. So the first one we're going to cover, the first one we'll look at, first distortion we'll look at is what we call all or nothing thinking. Okay, so it's all or nothing. And what all or nothing thinking is, you can read my writing, I wouldn't be too concerned about my writing. It's just a guide. We look at things in black and white, all or nothing thinking. We look for perfection. There's no real shades of grey. An example might be, okay, a good example of all or nothing thinking might be someone eats a biscuit. They're on a diet and they eat a biscuit of the eating plan. They eat one biscuit and ultimately they think, oh no, I can't believe I had that, and they eat the whole packet, and they go in the fridge and eat the chocolate, and then they go out and they run out of chocolate in the house and buy some more. There's no really shades of grey. There's nothing short of perfection. There's very, very firm boundaries in place. So ultimately, the end person might have a healthy eating plan. It's a Saturday night, they go out for a meal, and they have some dessert. They weren't intending on having dessert, they were going to eat healthily, and then they think, I've blown it, I can't believe I've blown it, there's no room to maneuver, and then they have more dessert, and they order more, and the following day they just eat whatever, and then they just blow their diet for the next few days, and might not even go back onto it. So that's that all or nothing thinking. Okay, I'm going to skim through these because of time, but you can rerun them and watch them, and I've got some literature you can have and read in your own time, your own pace. The next one we'll look at, number 2, is over-generalisation. Okay, so over-generalisation. You view a negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. A negative event or coincidence of events, a negative pattern of defeat. So ultimately the interview doesn't go well. You go for an interview, it doesn't go well, and I'm never going to get the job. It's a never-ending pattern of defeat. Ultimately, in the end, you go for a test, you've got a series of tests to do, or assessments, and one doesn't go well, and that's it. It's going to be that way. And people who are overgeneralized use the word always, a lot, and never. Always and never. And that's an overgeneralization. And you can sort of start becoming aware of some of these patterns as we go along, and take note and just familiarize yourself with the patterns. You can come over the slide again and watch them again if you want to. The next one, the further we'll look at, is the mental filter. So mental filter. The mental filter is an interesting one because we tend to delete or ignore the positives. To give you an example, let's say you did a presentation at work, you asked to do a presentation at work, and the presentation went really well. It went relatively well. 95% of feedback was great. Evaluations were great. Maybe you had 5%, wasn't majorly criticising, but slightly negative, and you focus on that and you stewed on that. So rather than focusing on what went really well, you kind of stew on that 5%. And don't get me wrong, we all are going to look at various things that people say constructively or whichever way you look at it, but in the end you stew over that and that becomes your focal point, and you get really upset and angry and downbeat about that situation, and that's the mental filter as a general rule. So you focus on that 5%, or you dismiss all the positive feedback you may have got in that situation. And I suppose you could argue that we all do that to a certain degree in certain situations. Now, the next one we're going to do is discounting the positives. Okay. The fourth one. Let's say you do a good accomplishment at work, you do a really good job. And someone comments on the job that you did at work, or you're a part of a team or sales team, whatever, and someone says, well done, and you discard that, you reject that positive experience by saying it didn't count. Why didn't it count? So you insist that your accomplishments or positive qualities don't count. Someone gives you a compliment and you think, well, you know, whatever type thing, and you might do a really good job, you might do, you know, something really good at work, and you say to yourself, well, somebody else could do it better. It's not a big deal. You sort of, you know, whatever. And the problem with that distortion here is that we discount the positives and it takes the joy out of anything, really. We start feeling inadequate. At one point is enough. So someone gives you a genuine praise, but it's never good enough for you. You sort of discount the positive and think, well, anyone else could have done it anyway, type thing. And sometimes that's obviously in certain situations not the way to think. We want to be able to accept that, yeah, we do a good job. We've all got various capabilities and strengths and qualities. We do a good job. Okay. The fifth one we'll look at is jumping onto conclusions. Jumping to conclusions. And the first one is mind reading. Okay, so we jump on conclusions. We'll just put conclusion there. And we have the mind read. And from the mind read, we sort of read into the negative. We think someone's thinking negative of us in a certain situation. That's the first part of it. So, for example, you might be introduced to new people in your new work, and you think, oh, they're all thinking about me in a certain type of way. Well, ultimately, you start with what we call fortune telling, and things aren't going to turn out really well. So, before an interview or a test, you tell yourself before the interview or the test, it's not going to go well. I'm going to blow it. I always blow it. It's not going to go well. Fortunately, you go out on a date, it's not going to go well. Presentation, it's not going to go well. I'm going to blow it. Or if you're depressed, you might say to yourself, I'm never going to get better. And that's the fifth one, jumping to conclusions. The two areas of mind reading. People are reading into a negative way, but you've got no evidence for that. They may well be thinking about your negative way, but you don't have any evidence for that. And the fortune telling, so it needs to turn out badly. We've no evidence as well as. Obviously there's confidence, don't get me wrong. In all these things, you've been prepared for an interview, a presentation, but if there's no evidence there, and it's just an assumption, a negative assumption, a biased way of thinking is irrational, it's not going to do you any good, so to speak. Okay. Now, the next one we're going to look at is 6. Just be clear with 6 now. Is magnification or minimization. So what we can do, first of all, we can magnification. So you blow things out of proportion. You blow things out of proportion inappropriately. You exaggerate the situation, the problem, or you minimize the importance of your qualities. This is also called the binocular trick as well. Okay, so the danger is that we can exaggerate the importance of a problem in a certain situation. So we magnify it, we make it a lot bigger than what it is, and give it a lot more credence and really blow it out of proportion. So, for example, you might not even make an error at work. It might be something you've done at work and something doesn't go to plan, and you really blow it out of proportion. You really make this a sort of big deal. Ultimately, in the end, the other side, you minimise, you do a good thing at work, and you kind of, well, you don't really give it any credibility. You don't sort of accept that praise. You minimise what you did. So ultimately, in the end, you might have a deadline on the Friday afternoon at work, and do really well with the deadline. And then in the end, what you do is you sort of magnify the importance of getting that deadline done, particularly if you're the only one who could do that report. Ultimately, in the end, you might not get the report, but it's okay to do it on the Monday, so you don't get it done by Friday, and you blow a proportion on the weekend, and that really debilitates you in more ways than one. So that's magnification, minimization. Okay, so the next one we'll look at is the seventh one, emotional reasoning. Okay? I feel like, or I don't feel like. So we link our emotions, our negative emotions. We reflect on our negative emotions, and they become our logic. So, for example, you might say to yourself, I feel like a fool. And then you must be a fool in your mind. Ultimately, in the end, I don't feel like doing X, Y, Z. I don't feel like going to the gym, even though logically it's a good idea if you do that, and you put it off, for example, for whatever reason, you assume the negative emotion is real. For example, okay, you might be walking, and I feel terrified of walking in a big crowd, and then you sort of don't go walking, you don't go shopping, you don't go down the high street to go shopping, but you feel really terrified. You go, if you're feeling up the logic that ultimately in the end, you can walk down the high street more often than not, and you'll be fine. But you get a feeling that things are going to go wrong, and that becomes your logic. I must be a bad person, you might say to yourself. I feel guilty, so then you think, well, I must be a bad person, I feel guilty. I feel angry, I feel hopeless, so I must be hopeless. So emotionally, rather than seeing things logically in situations. The eighth one we'll look at is should. Statements. Should statements. So what's a should statement? Should, must, and ought, and have to. You tell your things should be a certain way. Should be this way. Should statements are directed towards yourself in certain situations. They can cause guilt and frustrations. Well, I should exercise. I should do this. I should do that. I should have 2.2 kids. I should be married. I should have it. I should. And you should love yourself. Obviously, we give life meaning on an esoteric level. Life doesn't mean anything anyway. But in the end, don't get me wrong, we get caught up in life the way it is. But ultimately, in the end, it's really important to examine our shoulds. Shoulds aren't a good thing. And also, we can use these shoulds against other people. He should or she should know better. We can direct this to other people, and we do direct it to other people, we can end up being disappointed or disillusioned, because really our rules are ours and someone else's theirs. That person, they shouldn't criticize, they shouldn't do this, or they shouldn't do that. Okay? But they must do that. We set the rules and set the agenda of other people. A lot of people do that. We all do that to a certain degree. It's the extreme in the spectrum we do the statement that has the impact in the world. We carry on and we want life to be the way we want it to be, and we think it should be. We're going to be pretty disappointed, because there's 7 billion people on the planet and they've all got a different ideology in sort of the way life should be, and in the end we've got all different things that we think are right or wrong in any given situation. Okay, nearly there, we're at number 9. So, and the 9th one is labeling. We label, and labeling can be dangerous as well. Because when we label, we tend to label people's identity or ourselves. We label. Let me give you an example. Many years ago I was working with this woman, and she said she was feeling a bit depressed and a bit low. And to cut a long story short, because of time, eventually we sort of got on the topic of relationships. She wanted to be in a relationship. She She was a time in a relationship, she hadn't been in a relationship for a long time, so she says in the music married, didn't go well, bad experience, and she told me about what she was doing to get in a relationship. I wasn't going to give her relationship advice, whether she's in a relationship advice, it's her call. There's plenty of people in relationships who aren't happy, and some people who want to get a relationship. I'm not saying it's big for everybody, but she wanted a relationship. Now, she wanted to be in a relationship with somebody, yet in saying that she talked about what she was doing to be in a relationship. She'd go out, dating sites, doing this, that and the other, doing all the things people do to get in a relationship in certain situations, yet in saying that, eventually comes out, she says, what I also do, I have evenings with my friends, where these men are bastards evenings. Yes, men are bastards evenings, so she says anyway. This is labeling. So she's got an idea in her own mind of what she thinks someone should be like in certain situations. So that's, you could argue, make a point, as well as other distortions as well. There's labeling somebody else. So as long as you've got that, how are you going to behave? You think somebody else is a certain way. Now I'm not saying men are how they are. I'm not saying relationships are the right or the deal for everybody. But as long as, if you want a relationship, you see someone in that way, then obviously it's going to cause complications. How are you going to behave? What you believe is going to impact your behaviour. And also what you're going to do is you're going to focus on the qualities that you see as being those negative behavioural patterns rather than the negative. So what with her, the first thing I said to her, okay, that's a really big call. Out of 7 billion people, it's probably 3.5 billion men in the planet, so they say. I'm sure not all of them are that way inclined. It's like showing the shoulders, okay. There's some counter-examples. What about your dad? And she was very close to her dad, so she says, don't you talk to my dad about that? And that's why we brothers. You don't talk about brothers. So in the end, we can make a judgment call. We label people. And labeling is dangerous. And the reason why labeling is dangerous as well, we can also label other people too, and ourselves. And as a parent, by the way, it's dangerous too as a teacher. So we can label ourselves, we can call ourselves all sorts of names. I'm a fool, I'm this, I'm that, I'm hopeless. But we can label other people in certain situations. Labeling can lead to anger, it can lead to anxiety, it can lead to low self-esteem. Labeling is not a good idea because it can really lead to a lot of things. And also as a parent, by the way, to cut a long story short, we want to separate the identity to the behaviour. And I'm not saying I'm the best parent in the world, I'm a parent myself, I'm doing the best I can, like all parents. Yet in saying that, one thing I know for sure, what I mean by identity and behaviour as a parent, if you've got your own children, let's say for example, one of your children smashes a glass by accident, kicks a ball into the TV, or does both, or whatever, and you call your child, you're stupid, or you're a teacher, you call a student stupid. If you tell someone often enough, they start believing it. So really, rather than call them you want to separate the behaviour from the identity. So rather than you're stupid for kicking the ball at TV, that was not a good thing to do. Okay? So someone says to you, you're stupid, you're hopeless. How does that feel? In adverse to your behaviour, wasn't a good thing to do. So for example, if you're at work tomorrow, you're on a photocopy machine and you get it wrong and you do 300 copies and make a big mistake, boss comes out and says, you're stupid, you stupid, how could you do that? Blah, 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 blah. You're going to feel defensive, aren't you? You're going to feel angry, you're going to feel slow self-esteem. Rather than the behaviour, well obviously if you did that, you may not have been aware of how to do or use the mechanism. The key is really, I'm not condoning negative behaviour. I'm not saying that kids don't go to mischief. They do. But what I'm saying is, we all get in situations where we make mistakes, we say some stuff we want to retract and take back. But all I'm saying is a pointer. And I'm not giving anyone advice as a parent, by the way. We're all making our way in the world. And once someone gave me some advice, parenting advice, the only thing is they want to parent themselves. So people who give advice to other people sometimes aren't in that situation themselves. It's one of them, isn't it, really, in that situation. But it's really important to behave and separate that. You might have a young child and not hide the keys, your car keys, and you're stressing out in the morning, you've got to get to work, wherever you've got to get to, and you might say stuff that you want to take back. Really, in the end, most people don't do things from a personal point of view. They don't understand in certain situations, and really want to separate them together. The last one we'll look at, before we sort of start drawing things to a close, is what we call personalization and blame. Okay, personalizing stuff and blaming is not always a good idea. Okay, it's not a good idea, so we can personalize. And what do we mean by personalizing and blame? You blame yourself. You might blame yourself for something. You make yourself accountable, responsible for a certain situation. I'm not saying not take accountability, but there are many different permutations that have an impact on certain situations. So it might be, for example, someone blames themselves for their child getting in trouble at school. And there's many permutations that could have led to that happening. Oh, I'm a bad mum, I'm a bad dad, I can't believe I did that, it's all my fault. And blame is not going to, or personalising it, making it person ourselves, is not going to make it better, is it? Maybe we did contribute or we didn't contribute. But in the end, let's sort of see the validity in that situation. Also, what's really important too, is blaming other people. You could blame somebody else for whatever reason. We can all blame somebody else. We can all personalise stuff. It's because of him, because of her, whatever the situation might be. But in the end, really, ultimately, we sort of blame not solving anything. We personalise this. We're going to lead to guilt. We're going to lead to shame, feelings of inadequacy. And I once worked with a woman who said she was in an abusive relationship, and she actually blamed herself. And that's pretty sad, isn't it, when you think about it that way? She said, if it was a better wife, he wouldn't be as abusive as he was physically. Okay? So it's really important that we're very clear on labelling and blaming. We all say stuff to people, we're all human, we all do things. We can't tread on eggshells in every situation. There's no perfect person, so to speak, but in the end, it's at least becoming more aware of situation can go along and collaborate and make things easier for people. Now, that sort of brings us to the 10 main ones we're going to cover. What we will do in a future seminar, and what you can do having listened to tonight's seminar, is reflect back on what we've covered so far, learn it, do some research, and really follow them. I wouldn't be too concerned about the labels that we have, the distortions. The way the distortions tend to work, they tend to work like I call them a pack of dingoes, really. One offsets the other. So quite often they work in packs, like dingoes, you know, all over the place. One has a knock-on effect and the other one. And really, in the end, we want to untwist the thinking, so to speak. But the key is, and what I'm going to cover in a future seminar, is one step further. So I'll do a couple of seminars on the series, and next one is identifying them. And I'll sort of give you a flavour of what's to come in future seminar going forward. So I'll just sort of be clear. I don't think enough time is covered on understanding distortion, so I felt we'd go into detail with that. But in future seminar, we'll look at ways we can start identifying and restructuring the process. So what I want you to do, step one, what I want you to do is get a pen and paper, just to give you a flavour of what we're going to do in future seminar, is write down a feeling. Write down a feeling you have. It could be an emotional feeling, it could be anxious, worried, and just notice your thoughts associated to that feeling, which could cause physical sensation. So write one down, if you may, and just observe your thoughts, the next step around the feeling. So you've written the feeling, let's say the feeling could be anxious, and then your thoughts, and it could be your feelings associated to an exam, and you feel a bit anxious, the exam. Okay, now what I want to do, the first step, having covered what we've covered today, and you can sort of review what we've covered today, is identify the cognitive distortion. So you might be feeling a bit anxious about the exam, you might be thinking to yourself, I'm going to fail this exam, I'm going to fail this exam. And what you want to do is identify the cognitive distortion. So we could say that's fortune telling. Okay, so we might feel a bit anxious, identify the feeling, then we would our thoughts, fail the exam, and identify the distortion. And that's what gives you a flavour we're going to do in future seminar. We want to do more detail to identify the actual distortion itself. So in future seminar, we'll spend more time identifying the actual distortion. And what we will do is record the distortion, rationalize it, and replace. And to give you an example of the process, a few years ago I was delivering some CBT to staff that worked in care home, and on one occasion I had this young woman who was going to join me in the delivery on this occasion, and we used to get evaluations for what we did, and she did a really, really good job. really, really good job of presenting. It was the first time, and then we're going to do another session a few weeks after that with the staff, and we sort of checked the evaluation. And one evaluation came back and was quite negative, so to speak. So even though she knew some of this, or most of it anyway, she still felt she was stewing over it and was a bit angry about it. It really started affecting her going forward. And she was like, I don't really want to do the next presentation, Jim. I feel a bit frustrated. I feel upset. And on a whole, I would say 99% of the feedback was really, really good. It was 1%, one person, and what they said, we sort of rationalised it. It wasn't really anything major. Critical, obviously, it's major to her. It's major to her, but what we did, we questioned the validity of it, and we looked at 95%, 99% positive feedback, and we questioned the validity of that 1%, and went over it, and some of these techniques I'm going to go through. One technique I used for, I said, okay, if you're advising somebody else who you're not emotionally connected to, how would you advise them in that situation? And this sort of starts to replace the thought process going forward. So really, in the end, we rationalised the thought. One of the key distortions was mental filter, which is really focusing on the 1%. And going forward, we want to question that and change that. And we focused on the positive feedback, and by restructuring the thoughts, by getting it to how would you advise someone else in that situation, how much you connected to. And going forward in the end, she started replacing the thought process, saying, okay, it was the first time she presented in that situation, and 99% feedback's pretty good in that situation. Well, it's fantastic, isn't it, really? And she's going to carry on getting better ultimately in the end. And yeah, maybe the person might have a bit of a point by saying that, really. Let's look at the big picture and move forward. And that helped her become more functional and grow into that role and be confident and believe in herself. It's really important in life. We're going to face challenges. People are going to have opinions, people are going to say stuff, everything else. You're never going to get anything off the ground, you know. It's a bit like when you watch a program on TV, like the X Factor, whatever. One person says one person can sing, one says the other person's better. Or you might watch a football team or a football player. One person says one football player is better than the other. Ultimately, well, who's better? Who's worse? I guess it's your opinion, your perception on a certain situation in the end. And in life, everyone's going to have variable opinions. And they're entitled to them as well. And, you know, I'll give the structure control I can, let go I can, and vivid the difference. So, going forward, feel free to email me on info@excelnlp.com. That's info@excelnlp.com. Ultimately, we're going to post this out as well again. We'll record it as well, so I'll be available for you to watch again. You can watch it a few times and get your head around it all. And future seminar will go into a little bit more detail, and we'll look at ways we can really clearly identify the actual distortion using various processes and models, and then we can look at ways we can start repressing it and use the power of neuroplasticity to rewire our brain in certain situations where need be. Have a fantastic evening. Good night.